Good afternoon, Michelle Scheibner. Thank you for joining us here at Yellow Shelf.
Oh, look, it's absolutely my pleasure. I've been having a little look at this from afar for a while. So to be here is like, whoa, that's very cool.
Michelle, you have got yourself a pretty impressive new book that I know you're on a juggernaut of promoting. It's only recently been launched in the last few weeks. So thanks for spending, 10 minutes here at Yellow Shelf. Your book, Hush, a memoir unravelling the unintended legacy of family secrets. Wow, there's so much to unpack in this. So I'm just going to hand over to you to tell us, what do we need to know about the new book?
Look, I think, and thank you for that. I mean, we had to work to get that tagline down a bit, actually, because, you know, the version I had was a little bit longer because I wanted to say everything, but I understand now that that's not possible. I think the thing is, I when I was doing a lot of my own seeking and looking for and trying to understand what was going on with my life and why had it taken the path that it had, I came across a lot of books that were theory. And there would be, and whilst I loved the theory, there was a lot of case studies, which were like maybe a paragraph, maybe a page, if I was lucky, 2 pages. What I've tried to do here is to give my whole story. It's like the full case study. It's like the full, this is the blood, this is what happens across a lifetime when this stuff is not addressed. And so I offer that to the reader with all my care and courage and love, that because I think what happens is we learn when we see ourselves reflected in the stories of others.
Sure.
And even in some of those little short case studies, I'd think, oh, Rachel, I resonate with Rachel. But then what happened? And then what happened? And it's not there because it's not in the case study. So that's what I've aimed to do here. So the first third of the book, maybe a bit more, is really setting it up with what were the different things that were happening in my life that needed resolution. Then the second part is now I'm on the journey and I'm doing some research and I'm learning and I'm speaking to my wonderful therapist, who kind of was the first person to say to me, well, think about what was going on for you when your mother was pregnant. What was going on for you in the womb? That's like genetic imprinting going on right there before I'd even arrived. And then the third part of the book is really bringing all the learnings that I've done in the last 3 years together. So looking at the science around epigenetics, looking at the impact on the greater family system of when people are missing from that family and not acknowledged. And how does that show up for different people? And in my case, part 3 is where I kind of bring the jigsaw pieces together and illustrate this is what can happen. And this explains the different things in my life that I'm not especially proud of.
And Michelle, what inspired you to choose to write your story? So is there some portion of your background or your career? Yeah, tell us about that.
Well, it's a bit of both. I joined the expert author community to write a book on personal brand strategy, because
Yes,
that's the area of my coaching and mentoring for the last 20 something years, before personal branding was a thing.
agree.
Yeah, and it was
You're
like,
like, yeah, you're the original of, yeah, personal branding.
um, and before that, I'd been in career management and working. Well, I still did for a lot of that time. It's been in corporate career management and looking at things like, what is it about this leader's identity that makes people come along? I mean, we can look at all the competencies and so on and so on, but for me, there was another X factor. So
Sure.
I've always been fascinated with identity. What I didn't realize until I started working on the book was that I had been kind of leading a double life.
Okay.
I'd been presenting this very polished, because I knew how to,
Yes.
a professional brand. It had certainly opened doors for me, and it had since I'd first started working, but I was hiding who I really was because I was ashamed. And all of those things that I talk about in my TED talk, I grew up in an era where you kind of left school, you had a good job, but then you got married and you had kids, and therefore that was a mark of success. And I didn't marry and I didn't have children. And those sort of things kept eating away at me and were impacting part of my identity. So I needed to dig around, hence that the title, do we need an acceptable identity label in order to be validated? Now I know why I didn't marry, why I didn't have children, how that's impacted me. And at the end of the day, I've learned that they weren't my decisions. It wasn't my shame. It wasn't my grief. It didn't start with me, but I'd been living it since the day I was born. I'd been sad since the day I was born. I want other people to resolve that. I don't want other people, because this gets passed on to the next generation and the next generation. We need to resolve it, and we need to join the dots.
Yes. And what's the journey been like to resolve it, Michelle? And I know that's in the book, but is there anything you can tell us about that journey?
Oh, look, it's been an honouring. So for many, many years, since my mother died, she died when I was in my early 30s. Mother's Day was just couldn't do Mother's Day, could not do it at all. People, no, what are you doing for Mother's Day? Did not do it. So I launched Hush, to the world, in terms of released it to the world on Mother's Day this year.
Yes.
So Mother's Day from now on for me is the day Hush was born. Brilliant. So that's a little bit of healing and a little bit of honouring there.
Yeah.
My brother, who I didn't know I had, I was raised an only child. I bought him back. I bought his ashes back, and they are in a garden of memory now with my parents, his parents, his grandparents, his aunt and uncle. It's like I've closed that gap. And that is, it's just wonderful. For the first time in my life since I started writing the book, what I've been able to do is have a photo of my parents and my brother and my father's parents, who perished in a concentration camp in the Holocaust. But I can now bear to have a photo of them. I wouldn't say I was 100% healed, but what I would say is, without resolution, without joining these dots and understanding, I would never be doing this. I would never be having a conversation with you and be revealing such personal things. Never, never. But now I'm okay to do that. I'm good. I'm on a mission.
You certainly are. Look, and I'm going to put this in the show notes to make it really easy. But look, I know you've got this amazing TED Talk. And, for me, I shared with you earlier, I watched it. It was profound. It was emotional. It was, insightful around self-compassion. So I would definitely encourage everyone just to have a look at that initially. Tell us about that experience. So you get the call up for a TED Talk, or you take the opportunity?
Yeah. So I talk about it in the book. I got the message late at night. Are you ready to, there's an opportunity here. You can do a TED Talk. And I'm like, what? I was in the middle of my first dirty draft at that stage. Wow. But then I kind of thought about it and, okay, I can do this. I think my TED Talk is like the skeleton of this, and Hush is the heart, the lungs, the mind now. It's the embodiment of that. And I had never actually scripted anything I've ever said before, but you've got to with the TED Talk. Yeah. So that was very interesting. But what I learned then, which came in handy when I was writing, was the more you read something out loud, the more you hear yourself saying your words out loud, the more you can work with the language, the richer I was able to get the language and really get the tone. So that by the time I heard myself
Yep.
saying it, the emotion had gone.
Yeah.
It was under control because I knew what I was going to hear. But I still think I had enough emotion in the language that I was using for it to be conveyed. So look, it was an amazing experience that I would never have ever thought I would do. But again, I couldn't have done it if I hadn't have done the
Yeah.
work I've been doing since, well, it started in COVID, really.
Sure. And finally, Michelle, what is the best way to connect with you? If you are curious about Michelle, the professional, if we're curious to get a copy of the book, how do we connect with you?
So I'm all over LinkedIn, Michelle Scheibner. Website, michellescheibner.com. On the website, there are links to purchase Hush. There is a link to the TED Talk, and there will be, in a few days' time, a link to the Hush community where I'm encouraging people to submit their stories. What I'm noticing is as people read Hush, they're having their own ahas. They're talking to the family members. And so we're going to be posting those on a regular basis to give people a platform. Might even be my next book. Who knows? On Instagram, the _identity_activator, because I'm all about activating people's identities, helping them uncover and really activate that identity in the way I've done.
Yeah. Well, Michelle, I'll make sure I put that in the show notes to make it super easy. If there is another book, you've got to come back whenever that is. And I wish you all the best. Thank you so much for joining us here today at Yellow Shelf.
Thank you so much for having me. I like the opportunity to talk about this. I'm there.
Pleasure. Thanks, Michelle.